Hey everybody. So let's do another Enforcers Hall of Fame induction. Before we get to that, I just want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button. As long as you're a fan of hockey and a fan of the NHL, there are videos here for you. So please hit that subscribe button and follow this channel. So today I'm going to induct one of my all-time favorite players in NHL history into the Enforcers Hall of Fame. Certainly one of the best and most active fighters of the 1980s. The man himself, Chris Knuckles Nilan. Chris Nilan was not the biggest guy in the world by any stretch of the imagination, but he would fight anyone, and he was kind of nuts, and it was awesome. Um, Nyland had a pretty long career in the NHL. He played 688 career games. He scored 110 goals and 115 assists for 225 points. So he wasn't just a plug that just fought all the time. He could add a little bit of offense too. And on top of those 225 points, he had 3,043 penalty minutes. Those are obviously just regular season numbers. So yeah, he played parts of 13 years in the NHL and had a very good career for himself as a fighter. Between regular season and playoffs, again I don't count preseason in this at all. He had 251 career NHL fights, and a lot of those were against very tough opponents. And in the 80s, you had to fight a lot. The 80s was the peak decade of fighting in the NHL. So Nyland fought a lot, 251 times. His best offensive season in the league came in 1984-85 with the Montreal Canadiens. He had 21 goals, 16 assists. He also had 358 penalty minutes that year. And between playoffs and regular season, he had 33 fights, 28 in the playoffs, or 28 in the regular season and 5 in the playoffs. That was not his highest number of fights in a season. The next year, 85-86, he had 34. He had 28 again in the regular season and had 6 that year in the playoffs. So, Chris Nilan was a very good player certainly for a stretch with Montreal in the mid 80s, and he was also a very active and good fighter. Over the course of his career, 13 years, Chris Nilan had over 200 or more penalty minutes in 9 of those seasons, and in 2 of those seasons he was over 300 penalty minutes. So obviously a guy who could rack up the penalty minutes and was very, very active physically. Nilan is best known, I think, for being a Montreal Canadian. That's when his best years were, and that's when he really flourished in the league. Was mostly through the mid 80s with Montreal. He started in 1979-80 season with the Canadiens and played in Montreal through 1988 or into 1988, and then from 1988 to 1990 he was a New York Ranger. A lot of people forget that. Then he went to Boston from 1990 to 92, and then at the very end back to Montreal in 1992. Played, I believe, only 17 games for them at the end of his career. But the New York Rangers stint kind of gets forgotten. He's mostly known as a Canadian, and then also he had some. He was loved in Boston for those couple years he was a Bruin. Absolutely loved in Boston. The Rangers stint is definitely forgotten and not really talked about as much. But I think his time in Montreal, his first stint in Montreal, was absolutely the best of his career. And he had the best years of his career there, and he was a very strong physical presence with the Canadiens and certainly a very good fighter. So as you can see by the numbers, Nilan absolutely belongs in this Hall of Fame. He was an absolute beast, and he would fight a lot. He had years where he had 28, 29 fights in a season. He was not afraid to drop the gloves. He wasn't a very big guy, but he was kind of, a little messed up in the head, and he was just completely nuts at points, and he would just start throwing punches. And I miss those days of hockey. I wish it was still like that, where instead of just a little bit of pushing and shoving in front of the net, back then everyone just paired up and went. And that it was a fun time to watch hockey, and I never got to see it live, but I can go back and watch old games and watch YouTube videos and stuff. And hockey in the 80s was a wild time, and I wish I was around to see it, because it would have been absolutely my favorite era of NHL hockey. And Nilan is one of my favorite players in league history. Just an absolute animal. And I love watching. I love going back to watch the Good Friday brawl between Montreal and Quebec that lasted for like what seemed like hours. It just kept going and going and going. They went to the locker rooms for intermission, and before they could even start the next period, they started brawling again. And Chris Nilan was heavily involved in that, and that's one of my favorite brawls in NHL history. And this is one of my favorite guys. I really wish I had gotten to see him play live, and he not him playing before I was born, but that's the way it works out. So Chris Nilan, certainly deserving, is my next inductee into my Enforcer Hall of Fame. And decent offensive player too. He had a 20-goal season. He had 225 career points. It's not like he went out there and scored 1 goal and 3 assists every year. He could add some offense as well. And obviously what he was most known for, they called him Knuckles for a reason. His gloves off, over 3,000 penalty minutes. Great enforcer, great player, awesome guy to watch. I just wish I got to see more of him. So thank you guys for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you guys enjoy this series. I know I love doing this series. So look for more and more of these as the summer goes on. And I'll talk to you guys soon.